Here we go. So the last thing we did, we solved for the reactionary forces. We did the moments, and then we did sum of the forces, just the whole thing for the force vector, to figure out the sum of the forces. Now we're going to look at specific joints. Okay, so we can start looking at any specific joint we want. Why don't we do A to start with? So for A, let's start with the sum of the forces in whichever direction, the A direction or X direction. So we're going to say sum of the forces in the X direction. What do we have? They have to add up to 0. So in the X direction, what do we got? What forces are going to be acting, which includes members? Which forces are going to be acting in the X direction? We have reactionary force, so we have RAX. What else we got? Look at the members. Is there a force along a member that we need to know? We have AC. Okay, that's a member that has a force to it. So AC is the only other force we see. And they have to add up to 0. All right, then we plug in RAX, we figured out was 50. So that means AC is equal to a negative 50. So we just figured out one of the forces, another member force. AC is going to be negative 50. Okay? All right, so then we go in the Y direction. Sum of the forces in the Y direction. Give me the forces we see in the Y direction at A. There's only AB. So the only force we see is AB here. Okay? There's no other force acting on it. And it has to add up to 0. So what does that say about AB? AB is 0. Okay? So there you go. We know AB is 0. All right, now let's move along to the next one. So help me remember these things as we move along here. All right, so far we have RAX equaled 50. We have RBY equals 50. And RBX is equal to negative 50. We also figured out that what? AB is 0, and AC, thank you, is negative 50. Okay, so you just keep taking those along. Probably the best thing would be to have a little chart on the side. You know, like at the beginning of the problem, just start listing, just so you have space. So once you figure something out, you can list in that column so you can look back to it if you need something. All right, so let's do joint B. All right, joint B, let's do sum of the forces in the Y direction. What forces do we have in the Y direction? RBY. What else do we have? Even if it's equal to 0, we still have AB. Okay? And now this is where we have to do a component. We have BC is not perfectly vertical or perfectly horizontal. So we have to do the component of it. So I'm just going to say, so the member in NB, you have that BC. Okay? But only the Y piece is going to be listed here. So you're going to say BCY. Okay, and all of these add up to 0. All right? Now, right away we can look. We know that RBY is 50. We know that AB is 0. And we don't know BCY. We do our math, and we see that that means that BCY has to equal negative 50. Okay? So far we know that BCY equals negative 50. So now let's go to X. Sum of the forces in the X direction. What forces do we have in the X direction at B? We have RBX. Move this down a little bit. All right, what else do we have? We have the only other force again is going to be BC, but it's only BC in the X direction now. Am I right? Make sense? Okay, so we say plus BC in the X direction. And that adds up to 0. Okay, so then we plug and chug. We plug in our RBX, and we found out that RBX was negative 50. So we have negative 50 plus BCX is equal to 0. So BCX is equal to positive 50. All right, now, we probably want to keep BCX and BCY in their components because we're going to have to use them for the next pieces anyways. But if we need to know all the member forces too, okay, think about what you have right now. You have a Pythagorean theorem. Okay, you have BC, okay, and you know that BC is going to be, the BCX is 50, right? BCY is also 50. I'll get that phone in a second. Do Pythagorean and solve for what the actual member force is. But Mr. Spudik, couldn't we have just looked and seen it was a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and if once you got 150, you know the other one's 50 too? Yeah, that's true. That would have worked also. Okay? All right, so now we have BC. So what do we get? Who did somebody calculate what the what BC total is going to be? What do we get, an actual number? 70 point something? 71? 70.71. That's awesome. Okay, so there we go. So BC is 70.71. All right, now let's move on to the next part of it. All right, here we go. So that's what we got. Those are all the things so far. We've listed everything. RAX negative, or RAX is positive 50. RBX negative 50. RBY is positive 50. AB was 0. AC is negative 50. BCY is negative 50. BCX is positive 50. BC in general is 7.71. 70.71. Okay. The last joint we have to look at is C. So let's look at C real quick. Let's do some of the forces in the X direction. What forces do we have in the X direction? We have, what members do we have going on in the X direction? So we have AC And then we also have, we're looking at C. So AC, we have this piece and we have this piece. We have BC in the X direction. So we have AC plus BCX. Okay? And we already know those. So we know, because we know AC was equal to negative 50, BCX was equal to positive 50, and hey, that adds up to 0, so we're awesome. Okay? Now let's look at some of the forces in the Y direction. Some of the forces in the Y direction, we have 50, right? We have BCY is equal to 0. And so we have 50 plus, and BCY was negative 50. Holy smokes, look at that. They add up to 0. Good question. Why did I just do join C if we knew everything? It's a good question. That's really, I don't know why I did it either. There you go. Okay, so there you go. But now we know all the forces in all spots. Okay, so the whole thing with the positive and negatives, when we're looking at the overall forces, right? When we had the 50 pounds of force here and had to look at what's going on in the free body diagram, we made 50 going down as negative, so because we had to figure out that the other force was being positive, pushing up. When you start getting into the joints and all that stuff, now you have to start looking at, is it going in or away? And the positive and negatives will talk about tension versus compression. Okay? All right.